Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of The Guys Who Stare at Stats. I'm Cade Kennedy, and today I am currently joined by, well, nobody. Once again, as you see, this is the second time this has happened on the show. Andrew Santangelo will be here eventually. He's had some problems today getting, I don't know what in the world's been happening with him. The game of trying to figure out where in the world Andrew Santangelo is continues to be a mystery, and hopefully he shows up today. I think he's on his way or is trying to get on his way. I have no idea when he will get here, but that is enough about that. Now on to some of the main stories, I guess, to get to today. One of the big ones being the SEC football scheduling officially getting more clear, I guess you could say. Still no model determined, but Seth Emerson of The Athletic writing an article today. The divisions are more than likely going to be gone with the SEC. This is a trend that we've seen continue, whether it be in the Big Ten, whether it be in the ACC, whether it be in the Pac-12, whether it be in the Big 12, and now the SEC as well. More than likely, we are not going to see divisions in a lot of college football conferences now. I personally dislike the idea. I think it's better to have divisions. I understand why teams don't want to do it. They want to play teams more often. I think that is a good thing, but I think there are better ways to do that, personally, than to just rotate. But they don't ask me for my opinion about these things. The two models being discussed are, well, pretty simple. A 9-game league schedule is more than likely going to happen to the SEC. When you have 16 teams with Oklahoma and Texas coming in, you would have to have 9 conference games. I don't see any world in which you would play 8. The main thing is going to be, are you going to play 3 permanent games and rotate 6, or are you just going to play maybe 1 permanent game and rotate 7 or 8? 7 if you wanted to keep the traditional 8-game model. 7 if you want to keep that model, 8 if you want to do this newer model with 9 games. And there's a bit of a divide. It looks like the 3 to 6 is winning. And I personally think if there's going to be an option, that's the best way to do it. You get to play more teams. You get to keep your protected rivalries. You get to do everything you want to do there. So I'm excited to see the future of this, how the SEC plays this with all the spring meetings coming up with the conferences. There will be a lot to promote there and a lot to engage and do, and we'll be here covering it. There will be a lot of things to talk about when we get to those spring meetings with the conferences. More news coming in today. I mean, the West Virginia Athletic Director, this is coming from another one of these spring meetings we're starting to have. The Athletic Director Shane Lyons at the University of West Virginia saying that the 3 American Athletic Conference schools, Houston, Cincinnati, UCF, are close to the finish line, and all indications is that they still plan to join the Big 12 in July of 2023. This keeps everything on the right track that these 3 schools are trying to do. Obviously, BYU will join them in July of 2023, so everything is staying on track for conference realignment as we know it. Moving on to another story, a bit interesting if you haven't been following it. The Washington Commanders now, they have had a lot of trouble with their owner, Daniel Snyder. He has done a lot of things he shouldn't do. There's a lot of ethical problems going on in there with a lot of harassment, whether it be, in multiple ways, whether it be verbally, physically, any other way you want to think about it. But the official House Oversight Committee has requested that both the NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell and Daniel Snyder appear before the committee at a hearing June 22nd. Hello there to our audience. Hello there, T. Kennedy 60. How are you doing today? But it is going to be really interesting to see how this gets handled. I know the NFL is not happy about this. They do not want to see this get dragged more into the public eye. This is going to be, I really don't know. A lot of people think this is going to be the final straw for Daniel Snyder. I hope it is. He has completely mismanaged the Commanders. This has been it's always a sad time for Washington. I mean, they have not been relevant in a long time. Part of that is his fault, Mr. Snyder's fault, but I really don't know where we're going to get with this. This will be another thing we keep following up on. The final main story that came out today I want to talk about, Adrian Wojnarowski reporting that Quin Snyder still may not be the coach of the Utah Jazz. It seemed like he was in the clear. He didn't take the Lakers job. He didn't take some of these other high-profile jobs that people thought might be opening up. But he's been there 8 years. He's gotten them consistently to the playoffs every single year. I understand Utah wants more, but at the same time, you've got to have a team that's built for more. And when you have the setup you do where you have Rudy Gobert as your second-best player and Donovan Mitchell as your main guy, that is not a team that is going to go to the Western Conference Finals every single year. That's a team that, on a good year, might get out of the second round, maybe a Western Conference Finals appearance on a good year. That's about it. This is not a championship-caliber team in Utah. You're going to have to trade pieces. I know the rumors still that Mitchell and Gobert do not get along. They're not on the best of terms. That would not surprise me one bit. But moving into a little bit lighter news, ESPN, as always, their experts giving predictions for who's going to win the NBA Finals, which starts tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. The Warriors and the Celtics, Golden State making it back for the 6th time in 8 years. Just what can you say about the Warriors at this point? They've been able to do it with absolutely everybody. You know, Kevin Durant, without Kevin Durant, the original 73-9 team that made it to the finals. It doesn't matter what Golden State does. They have been able to play basketball extremely well, and this Boston team's done it the same way. These are both two homegrown teams, I guess you could say, in that they were made through the draft. They were built up naturally. No real superstars that were traded for on these teams. A few free agency acquisitions, but that's really about it. Not a whole lot of tinkering with either of these two. So I think this will be a really fun final series. As you can see here, a lot of the expert predictions, most of them picking the Warriors. Out of the 20 experts, 15 of them picked Golden State to win, and for Steph Curry to be Finals MVP. It would be the first time that Steph Curry won Finals MVP. And I am more than excited to see this matchup. I personally think the Warriors will win the series. I think it'll be a 6 or 7 game series. Golden State, to me, is just a little too much for Boston. Boston's looked a bit too inconsistent for my liking with how they played that series against Miami. Yes, you're not going to see that physical of a defense against Golden State that you saw against Miami, but at the same time, you're going to have to deal with a lot better of an offense with Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Andrew Wiggins, whoever they're going to put out there, Jordan Poole. Anybody can play for the Warriors the way their system is designed to work. And so I am really excited to see how that final series is. And finally, walking in, joining us here is, well, Mr. Santangelo. Andrew, it has been a long time, it feels like. It feels like it has been literal months have passed. It is now June 1st, so yes, literal months have passed since I've seen you. Andrew, how are you doing today?
It's been crazy, if I say so myself. Had to take care of a couple things, house-wise and everything, so finally get over here. I apologize for arriving a little late.
That's okay. But, as long as you got here.
Exactly, right? And I appreciate it. But no, I hope you're doing well. Like you said, it's been a while, so hope things are well in your life.
Everything is going well. We're just getting ready to talk a little bit about the Warriors-Celtics finals going on tomorrow. Talk a little bit about that matchup. I personally think the Warriors will win the series. I agree with a lot of the ESPN people here. I think it'll be a Warriors in 6 or 7 type of deal. I think the Warriors are just too much for Boston. Boston's a great team, obviously. You got to be a great team to get here. But they just look too inconsistent for my liking. You play one great game, then you play one bad game. You play one great, one bad. Even though the Warriors have had some inconsistency as well, they've been able to battle through it and still close out games.
Yeah, without question. I agree. I think you hit it right on the nose there with the inconsistent word there. I think that's what worries me with the Celtics. If you're a Boston fan, I think that's what a lot of them would worry about. I mean, you look at the group. I mean, Tatum's going to go out and, he'll do his thing for the most part. But you look at the the star 2, star 3 type players. I mean, you go to Jaylen Brown. He's had his fair share of great games, but he's also had his fair share of bad. And I don't necessarily disagree with what Brown said. I forget after which game it was, but when those two and Brown and Tatum are on, they might be one of the toughest, if not the toughest, to beat in the NBA right now.
Yeah.
But the problem is he used the word if, so I'm going to use the word if. It's if they're on. Because you don't know if they're both on.
That is one of the bigger ifs in this final series, I would say.
Yeah, and then you go to the third star. Who is the third star? I mean, one night it's Marcus Smart, and his defense is usually always there. But the problem is, the problem with that is he going to be there? I mean, his defense will be, but his offense isn't always there. And, I mean, anyone knows that going back to even the college days. And I think that's where it's going to come down to who's going to step up if one of them are down and everything. And here's the thing with the Warriors. They live and die, obviously, by the shooting. We all know that by now. And they might have one off game. So, like, Boston will get that one on whenever that off day is. It'll probably be game 3 when it switches back over to Boston. But, no, I think it's going to be – I think overall it's going to be a really good series, though. And I think the Celtics are the better matchup than the Heat were. So, I think from an NBA standpoint, I think that was the team they were glad that – I mean, if they're glad a team wins, it's them. And I think it's because of the defense. I mean, the how athletic a lot of those guys are and their ability to cover the perimeter is going to cause a little bit matchup problems there. So, it will be a fun series. Obviously, as a Sixers fan, it's going to be a pain to watch the Celtics, especially because I think it's going to be a pretty deep series, 6 or 7 games. But, no, yeah, I think it's going to be one for the ages, though. I do think so. I really think it's going to be that good of a series.
I think so, too. As much as I don't like dynasties, I am excited to see the Warriors back a little bit. They're one of the few that when you drop off and you get riddled with injuries for 2 years, to see them make it back, even though they went through Dallas to get there, I'm still proud of them. I'm still happy to see them back and hope they do well. It really will be fun. I am excited for it. Like I said, going to be 8 o'clock tomorrow. 3.5-point favorites are the Warriors. We'll talk a little bit more about this on tomorrow's show as well as we go counting down right into the finals. I know there was other big news for the Warriors today. Otto Porter and Andre Iguodala, and I believe even Gary Payton II were all officially listed as day-to-day. With some of the big news there. And, I mean, Marcus Smart and Robert Williams are going to be day-to-day. I expect everyone that can play is going to play. But moving on to what happened in the NHL last night, you will go to a hockey game and a shootout breaks out. Edmonton and Colorado back and forth the entire game. By the time I got home from the show last night, it was already 2-2. And I was just like, okay. Well, I mean, we predicted scoring in this one, and, I mean, what else did you want? 14 goals in Game 1. It doesn't matter who's going to do it. Place was absolutely electric in Denver, and an 8-6 win for the Avs as they pulled away. Edmonton made it close at the end. They nearly rallied to tie it, but the Avs just getting them by 2 goals. Also 14 goals, the second most ever scored in Game 1 of a Western Conference Final. 15 was the record, which also featured the Edmonton Oilers. The certain guy named Wayne Gretzky. I don't know if you've heard of him.
I don't know, maybe once or twice. No, I mean, last night was an incredible game, obviously, and I think it's going to be the story of the series. And I think last night's winner is going to be – it shows why I think partially the Avalanche will win the series as well, is because you look at the way last night – obviously, Edmonton's got Connor McDavid. So, Edmonton's got the best player on the ice. But you look at top-to-bottom team, that's the Colorado Avalanche. And I think that was on display last night. While, yes, obviously the scoring was at an all-time high. I mean, every time you blinked, it seemed like a team scored, especially in that second period. Obviously, it died down a little bit in the third. But, man, that start to the second period and even the game was just incredible. And I think that's where it's going to be big time for the Avalanche is top to bottom. They're the better overall team. And I don't know about you, but that team is so quick. It's amazing how fast they get on one side or the other.
That was the thing that I had a lot of trouble with the Blues when they played the Avs was how are you supposed to stop a team that is just faster than you? I mean, the only way I could think of is you got to make this a physical game. You've got to be able to hit them enough that they slow down, and the Blues were able to do that. But anytime they stopped for 5 minutes to let themselves breathe and get back in it, well, you're off to the races again. And it's like, okay, well, I don't know how you're supposed to do that. Also, T. Kennedy, everything's fine on our end. I don't know. it must be an audio problem on your end if you can't hear us, because everything's coming through clear on our end. So if you can maybe troubleshoot that yourself, trying to get things fixed. Everything is good to go on our end here. Of course, if you can't hear me, you probably didn't hear any of what I just said. But I don't know. I don't know how else to help you there. But moving on to the game tonight, Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals, third year in a row, Tampa Bay goes to play a New York team. Not the Islanders this year, but the Rangers. And New York doing what Boston couldn't. They beat Carolina on the road. They were able to finally end the Canes' reign. And Tampa Bay favored in this one in Madison Square Garden. Still no Braden Point for the Bolts. When you're able to sweep the number one team in the NHL without your starting center, that's usually a pretty good sign. And, you're talking to a two-time champion here. So I think this will be a fun series. I think New York has a lot of momentum going their way. Igor Shevchkin, he has been playing an absolutely fantastic series in the net, in between the bars there. So I really want to see how this one goes. I could see this being a kind of return to 1-0, 2-1, good defensive type of game.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think it's going to be an interesting series. I think I'll give the experience here to Tampa Bay, and I think that's a big thing. Is the Lightning have the experience? You mentioned it. You're missing your starting center, and you're still a favorite on the road. That goes to show how deep of a team, how experienced of a team, how well coached you are. And I think that's gonna be shown here in this series against the Rangers. And it's been a while, I feel like, since the Rangers have made it this far into the playoffs. And I'm sure they mentioned it, but I didn't see when the last time they made it to the Eastern Conference Finals was. But to me, I don't know. I was surprised how well the Rangers played all season. I wasn't expecting them to be bottom tier, but to be this good and to have a home series over the Lightning this deep into the playoffs, that was surprising to me. But I think it's gonna be a good series. But I think the Lightning will take it in 6, and I think Tampa opens the series with the win on the road too.
So I think I agree with you. Tampa, I think, gets the win in Game 1, and I just don't see how Tampa gets stopped. I know it feels exactly like last year. A rocky first series it felt like was going to happen, and then, okay, never mind, they're taking control over Florida. Oh, my, no one's going to stop them.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it felt watching that Florida series. It went from, okay, they're up 2-0. If they win Game 3 at home, it's over, and I don't know who's stopping them. And now we're here. And for the third year in a row, I think Tampa's going to win the East, or equivalent of the East, and make it back to the Stanley Cup final. I agree with you.
Yeah, I think Stamkos, he's going to be too much in the series as well. It's incredible. We talk about the dynasties and other sports and everything, and obviously the Warriors here recently, as we just got done talking about a little bit. But to me, basketball has always been different. Because when you have the stars, you're going to continue to be good.
Yes.
To me, you get hit every day or every game, not every day. Every game, incredible. Every day.
Yes.
Every game, you're getting hit as hard as they do. And you kind of like, in other sports, like even football, you don't see teams win back-to-back often. You might get there, but you don't win back-to-back often. Outside, obviously, the Patriots had their days, but to me here, it's incredible. It's almost like you're just waiting for Tampa to have that series where, they just run out of gas because they've been going this far every year. But this Tampa team doesn't ever do that, and I don't think it's going to change here. I do think a Tampa Bay Colorado would be an epic finals, and if we get that, that's what I'm hoping for at least. And I don't know, that one will be tough to pick if that's what ends up being, because that one could go either way.
That would be a really tough one. Both of those teams just extremely talented, a lot of depth, a lot of really everything you need to be a contender. And so we're both in agreement that Tampa Bay gets this one. I want to kind of get you caught up on some of the stuff I talked about before you got in here. The first thing, what was reporting late last night, that Quin Snyder's future still remaining unclear with the Jazz, even though people thought this was a locked-up, safe thing now that the Lakers aren't after him, now that no one else is after him. But apparently he's still maybe on the hot seat there.
Yeah, I don't know if that's they never really said if it's a Snyder decision, if it's a Jazz decision, which if it's a Utah decision, and they're not giving him an answer. To me, that's a shame. I mean, this guy's coached you guys for a while. He's overachieved with his franchise. I mean, I know they haven't won the big thing, but let's be real. He's overachieved for, I think,
for the 8 years
Utah's expectations, and he's kind of rebuilt them a little bit. So if this is if this is the Jazz not giving him an answer, to me, that's ridiculous for how much he's. I mean, you at least owe it to him to give him that spot. I mean, you think about it. He's now lost out on a Lakers job. He's lost out on the Kings job. He's lost out on the Cavs job. I mean, he's lost out on all these jobs. It's almost like at this point, the Celtics aren't firing their coach. The Warriors aren't firing their coach.
Yep.
The Heat aren't firing their coach. The Mavericks aren't going to fire Cade after the. I mean, so to me, the situation you put him in now is almost like he might not have a coaching job next year because of how he got fired, where he might have to sit out a year just because of this situation. And, I mean, obviously if something happens and he is out, that might spark a lesser team where they were on the fence. Well, now we can get Snyder, so let's get rid of who we have right now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously it might open up a different spot, but, again, to me, you at least owe it to him. Make the decision. Let him go find somewhere new because, I mean, there's no reason. Unless he wants to be out and take a year off, there's no reason why he shouldn't be coaching next year.
Yeah, and then another one to bring up, just kind of some spring meeting stuff with college football going on. Always one of the weirdest times of the year because things that you just think are already happening get triple confirmed, and it's one of the most fun things in the world. But this came out earlier today, talking to the West Virginia athletic director at Big 12 spring meetings. The 3 AAC schools are still on track. Everything is still set for July 2023 for the new look Big 12 with Cincinnati, UCF, Houston, and BYU all joining. Everything should be good to go there. So not a whole lot to say about this, just it's still happening. Everything is still staying the course there.
Good. I mean, I think that's obviously great to hear and something the Big 12 needs to keep getting confirmation on that. Obviously, you're losing two huge schools, so you need to make sure a team isn't going to back out last minute or something like that. So, I mean, as funny as it is to see all these triple reports saying, yeah, it's going to happen, to me, at least the Big 12 is getting reconfirmation and everything because they need it.
Yep, and then another one to talk about, the SEC spring meetings still getting ready to go on, and the big thing is divisions are more than likely done in the SEC. We're seeing this in nearly every conference now. The Pac-12 is going to get rid of them. The ACC probably will. The Big Ten, I know, has at least talked about it at some length. And the two scheduling models, more than likely, I think it's going to be the 3 permanent games and 6 rotating games. I personally am a fan of divisions. I just think it's a lot simpler to do. I understand wanting to play every team twice in 4 years. That's a completely understandable thing to me. But I don't understand why you can't rotate it a bit quicker. Like in the old Big 12 days, it was you played the same 3 teams from the opposite division for 3 years and then you rotate. And that was always kind of ridiculous because, okay, we're not going to see those teams for 3 years. You're going to take away OU Missouri or OU Nebraska, which would be a big-time matchup. I know the SEC had it set up to Georgia and Texas A&M. When Texas A&M joined the conference, they didn't get to play Georgia, who was one of their marquee games, for 8 years. And so that was a big scheduling conflict there, and I don't understand. Considering they played 8 conference games and now you'll play 9, you can just keep rotating it. You play, 7 division games, 2 conference opponents. You should be able to get through everybody.
Yeah, I agree with that, and it's tough, obviously. Each conference does it different, and I think I think the way they sometimes view it too is you're a conference, you kind of already have a division in terms of that conference. I think for me, it's big on number-wise. Like the conferences with 8 teams, they don't really need 2 separate divisions. The conferences with 10 teams, I don't think you really need it. Like the Big 12, right now, I don't think you need it. Obviously, if you're going to be adding more, we'll see what they get to. But, I mean, you look at the Big 10, they got, 16 teams, 14 or 16 teams in there? I forget. I feel like it changes every year with the Big 10. But, no, I think a conference like that needs it because of how many teams they have. They need some type of – but, I mean, in the end, I mean, you mentioned it, like the scheduling-wise. Why can't you just do that scheduling module and just have divisions? Like, you could say, okay, we're going to rotate these teams. Like, it's not like you have to play who's in your division that many times. I mean, I guess you do if you're in that division. But to me, you can still rotate it and make it still equal like that. But I think partially too, in terms of that. I mean, they don't want divisions because if they keep it where you have to play so many teams in your division, you're gonna be handicapped a little bit in some of the scheduling. I mean, you're gonna hurt some people's schedules. You're gonna make some tougher. So I think it's gonna oddly open up some more chances for other teams. I do think in the SEC to make it a little more even that way too. I mean, you look at a lot of times when how good the Alabama division always is, some of those teams can't keep up. So it might make it more equal for some of those second to fourth place teams to maybe make a late run because Alabama might have to go play a team like Georgia or something on the other side, depending on year where it's at. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
It definitely will be for sure. And moving on a little bit to something that starts tomorrow. I don't know how much you've been paying attention to college softball, but the Women's College World Series is here. One of my favorite times of the year. You just get so much going on. We got college baseball getting ready to enter postseason. We got college softball, the NBA Finals, the Stanley Cup. So much about to come to a head pretty much in these next few weeks. And starting with the 11 a.m. game tomorrow, UCLA taking on Texas. Texas, one of the 3 unranked teams making it all the way. And then at 1:30, Oklahoma taking on Northwestern. Another big game there. The Sooners trying to go back-to-back and get another national title. Florida-Oregon State is the 6 o'clock game. The Gators, the 14th seed, upsetting Virginia Tech in a super regional. And Oklahoma State making it and playing Arizona, who has all the tradition in the world, but had to upset a 15 seed in their regional and then go on the road and win a super to get to OKC again. So I don't know how much of a college softball person you are, Andrew. I don't know if you've been paying as close attention to it as we have, but it should be a really fun time. I know I made my picks yesterday for some of the games, what I think is going to happen. I've got UCLA, Oklahoma, Florida, and Oklahoma State all winning, pretty much going about as chalk as you possibly can in the first round. But it should be a fun time in Oklahoma City for sure.
Yeah, I think it's a very underrated time in the sports world, usually when you get to this, because, I mean, listen, we all know the state of baseball and everything, and softball is kind of not as popular as it used to be and everything, but I've always stuck with it. I've always loved this time of year. I always watch the College World Series, both softball and baseball. I watch more than just the World Series too. I mean, that's the beauty of having ESPN Plus in these days, and they got like everything on there. They got. I mean, pick a smaller conference. They're showing that softball game in mid-March or beginning of April, whenever. And yeah, I tune in to some of those every once in a while and everything. And no, I love. I mean, especially when they get the field of 64 and everything, and both sides. I absolutely love this time of year. I've been watching a lot of it. Especially Oklahoma State, being a grad from there, I haven't really missed a game on their side. I mean, obviously, it's tough to watch every game in the bracket. Yeah. But no, I make sure to watch Oklahoma State all the time and everything, and it's exciting, and I'm ready for it, and it'll be fun to watch. And I don't know, I think Oregon State, Florida. I don't think it's much. I think that'll be on paper. I think it's one of an underrated game. I could see Oregon State giving them a contest there. Yeah. And no, I think in all reality, I think you're gonna end up with a Bedlam World Series. I think that's where you're gonna be at. It'll be a fun time in Oklahoma City if that does happen.
Nothing bad will happen, I'm sure. There won't be 20,000 people outside the stadium before the game starts.
I'll tell you what, those ticket prices are insane. I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll have fun with it and maybe head down on Saturday or something. I looked at it. Cheapest one I could find so far, like $220. I'm like, yeah, maybe not.
Yeah, no.
I'll stick to the TV.
The way that works is tickets go on sale in the middle of April, and usually UCLA, OU, Alabama, Arizona, teams that are traditionally there will pretty much sell the place out in about a week. Even though regionals haven't even been announced yet, they will sell the whole thing out, and then you get the resale market. When I checked, the cheapest ticket for a good seat was like $400 when I checked once. And I was like, yeah, as much as I made my one trip there in 2011, I don't think I'm going back for a long time.
Well, and obviously that's a big issue with it too. But part of the problem too is a good friend of mine was telling me the other day is when COVID happened, they honored the 2020 tickets and said you can keep them for 2021 in 2022. Like, you got to pick which year you want to use it. And obviously, last summer, it wasn't as big as it was in 2020, obviously, but it was still pretty big last summer. Yeah. And obviously, I think a lot of people waited. So a lot of tickets still haven't been opened back up yet to the public because a lot of people already had them reserved still. So they hit the resale market pretty quick already this year, and that was part of the issue as well, on top of the normal issues in trying to find a ticket. So that obviously didn't go well, but no, I mean, overall, I think it's going to be a fun time to watch, and we'll see what happens. I think you'll get, to go off your picks, I'll go UCLA. I'm going to go with the same ones as you, in terms of UCLA, Oklahoma, Florida, and Oklahoma State, but I'll take Oklahoma State over Florida in the second round, and then we'll probably have another show by then.
Yeah, we will have a show tomorrow to kind of adjust our expectations, but considering what happens, because we will be on the air after that OU Northwestern game, so we'll be able to kind of rearrange things a little bit there. But moving on to the world of college baseball, the bracket has been revealed. A lot of people are upset. A lot of people are excited. This always happens when you get a bracket revealed. Yeah. There's always going to be no perfect bracket. A few I did want to highlight, though. The big controversy was Notre Dame. How do the Fighting Irish not get to host a regional? They had an RPI of 14. They had one of the better strength of schedules in the country. They played in a tough ACC, and yet they don't get a super. They don't even get a regional. And if they get a super, they got to go play the number one team in Tennessee.
Yeah, I think the draw in terms of that is bad, but to me, who would you replace Notre Dame with? I think, you look at all these teams in this field. I mean, it was a good year for baseball.
It was.
You look at, especially some of the Big 12 teams got rewarded. For how good their conference is, and that's the problem. To me, there's a lot of good teams this year, and Notre Dame was obviously one of them, and could have got a position. But I guess my big question to those who want Notre Dame to get a regional, who would you replace them with? Like, in all honesty, I think it's tough to kick out a team.
Yeah, I think the big one was if they would have just swapped Georgia Southern and Notre Dame places as the 1 and 2, I think people would have been perfectly okay with that.
And that's where you get the lose-lose situation.
Yes.
You do that, and then you're going to get, they never reward the smaller schools. You're never going to know what they actually get. And here's an instance you do that, and now it's backfires. And, again, it's a lose-lose situation because then even if you do swap them, it's, they still got a bad draw because if they win, they got to go on and face Tennessee the next round. So, again, that's the tough part being the people that vote is, you're never in a win-win situation in that job. So that's always funny to see. But, no, there's a lot of good matchups that I'm excited for if they happen.
If they play out the way we think.
You look at it. Dallas Baptist is always a fun market team to watch. That'd be a fun game with Texas if they get there. You look at OSU. OSU, Arkansas, possibly even Grand Canyon is usually a pretty good team. And nothing against Missouri State, but
they're just kind of they're
kind of there.
They're kind of there. They're still good, but they're just kind of there.
I would love to go down to Stillwater this weekend and see an OSU Arkansas game there to get to the next round. And even if let's say OSU, actually, obviously I want OSU, but whether it's OSU or Arkansas, there if they make it out, if they got a potential matchup with UNC, that's fun to watch. You got VCU. They won the A-10 there, so that's a team to look out for. Georgia obviously being the SEC, that'll be a matchup. There's a lot of good potential matchups and everything. So it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out and everything. And Vandy underachieved a little bit. Who's to say they don't hit the? Obviously they got seated where they are supposed to be seated, but they're a team that underachieved a little bit. Who's to say they don't kick it on here? Now it's when it actually matters. And maybe they upset Oregon State. That's not an easy draw for Oregon State. I get it. Vandy hasn't looked the way they used to, but imagine that, a storied program like Vanderbilt, and you're Oregon State, and you're ranked 3, and you're going to go up against that story of a program. Talk about a tough draw. That's one you can't look past.
Yeah, there are so many fun matchups to talk about here. Oklahoma, Liberty, Florida, and Central Michigan. That's going to be a tough regional in Gainesville. Florida and Oklahoma getting hot at pretty much the best time you can think of. Florida making it all the way to the SEC title game as a 7 seed. OU winning their first Big 12 tournament title in 9 years. TCU A&M, I think, is one of my favorite matchups. Jim Schnoschnagel going from TCU to Texas A&M. Texas A&M gets to be the number 5 team in the country, host a regional, and now you got to play TCU.
That's just fun. This is where it gets all down to all the good teams and everything. And I can't remember. I think they're at the bottom of the bracket on the left side, Gonzaga. I mean, their team, they swept Oklahoma State in Stillwater. I mean, they're a team that, you're Virginia Tech, you can't look past. That's a team that could create noise down there and everything. And it's interesting. I mean, again, I can go on about a lot of different regions, but I mean, you look at LSU. They're another team, a storied program, didn't have as good a year as usual, but who's to say? When you look at their draw, I mean, obviously Southern Miss, I mean, they've been good, and I mean, who's to say LSU doesn't come out of that region and create some noise and everything? And so, I mean, there's a lot of matchups, and especially even going into the second round. And well, I don't know how it's called the second round or
super
regional.
Yeah, super regional.
I mean, I'm going to be biased here a little bit, but I would love to go down and watch OSU North Carolina settle that out next weekend. I mean, that's a matchup I'm already looking forward to. I mean, and that's I love baseball, so I can go on about this. And
I'll let you go on all about it tomorrow's show when we actually predict the regionals and everything going on with them. But that will wrap everything up for our show tonight. A bit of a shorter show, but that's okay. We will be back tomorrow at 5:30 or 5, somewhere around there, kind of depending on when softball ends, when other things begin, trying to get the pace of that working. But until next time, for Andrew Santangelo, I'm Cade Kennedy. If you liked what you heard this evening, don't forget to give us a follow here on Twitch. Subscribe to the NWTV7 YouTube channel or our new YouTube channel, The Guys Who Stare at Stats. Give us a follow on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you want to. And until next time, have a great night, everybody.